So hi everybody and welcome back to C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 268 and in this video we start with exercises, and I do my exercises like my other videos where I present you questions and I want that you pause the video, read the question and try your best and then compare it with my question, and don't worry about if it's perfect or absolute correct, because that's why we are here, that's why we are doing the exercises. We are repeating all the things, and if it's wrong we just research it again, we repeat the stuff what we already learned. And important is I will have also not perfect examples, and that's why the most important part is that you are able to understand this CPP reference common, because this is one of our goals, and if you are able to do so to understand this side, then you can read the documentation on your own and you don't have to ask anyone if this is correct or not, because then you see how it is defined, how it is used, and what is wrong and what is right. Important here is also to note that of course this is just a pre-step, because our final step is to read the original documentation, the original C++ documentation. But this one is also good when we are able to read this CPP reference com site, because it's the, let's say, the the summarized, easier version of the original paper, something like that. So with that said, let's get started, and I want again that you read the question, pause the video, and then you can compare it with my answer. And let's get started. It says here, create a class and use all good practice methods. So pause the video. Of course, I will not pause here. I will go to my answer. And my answer is this. First of all, I create a class house. Okay, the naming is very important because this is our type, and the type should also indicate what we are going to do. Okay, anything with house, that's very good. And then I have here variable section, and then I have here a constructor section and a function section, and this commenting is very important, but careful, this commenting is only for starters, that I structure my class here, make it visible how I structure it. For beginners in real code, you will never see that anyone is commenting like this, but you should comment very often very difficult part of codes. For example, if you have here a function and the comment should answer the question for what or why you are doing this. For what I'm doing here, print house number, probably I need this one later for representation, and then you write a comment for this one, something like need it for representation in out in I don't know in what is this called, in representation in text text or something, I don't know. So you can write there something, and you can see this commenting, and that's very important, should be not describing what this is. For example, you should not say I print here the house number. That makes no sense. The question is for what you need this function and for what, and you can see in my case I need this later for representing in a text this function here, and why I need this. That's very important, and because we can read what this is doing here. This is printing house number, and that's also another thing. Again, we are back to naming of functions or variable names or class names. In general, naming is very important. You should read this one time and already see what is the intention, what it will do. And you can see print house number is a very good naming. We will print the house number probably here. That's very good. Okay, let's go on here a little bit more. And then we have here variables, and here we have, what is that again? Access specifier. Yes, and how many we have? 3. We have public, we have protective, we have private. And what is that? This is a variable. And what is that? This is a default value. And then again, naming, make a good naming, one-time reading, and don't make this one like this in this demonstration codes. They are using short names just for demonstration purposes and sometimes for calculations and so on. Don't make this in real code. In real code, this is the worst you can do, and probably you will not be hired, or your code will be not readable because it's not supporting readability. All right, let's go on. Then we go on here a little bit more. Then we have here, what is that? Important here, you can see it starts with house. It is the class name. Then we instantly know this is the constructor, and we have also described it here as a constructor. Important here, I have two types of constructor. Here we have parameter. Here we have an initializer list, and here we have an empty body, and you can see if the body is empty, we write it in one line so that we are not wasting too much space for empty lines. And then what is that? This is also a constructor, but this one here till this part is a default constructor, but here I use this equal default sign, this default keyword. We have talked a little bit about this one, and this default says, in this case, what is it saying again? Try to answer it on your own before I say it. In this case, we are forcing the compiler to create a default constructor. And why we are doing this? What is the reason for that? The reason for that is because we already provided here a constructor with a parameter. We know that if we would not provide a default constructor, the compiler would not create here a default constructor anymore, because it is assuming we have to use that one. So you want as a programmer to use that one no matter what. But if you are providing a default constructor like this, then you are saying, constructor, I still need a default constructor for this house, so please make it. And the question is here, wait a minute, why we are doing it this way and not just this way here? Oops, sorry for this one. What was again commenting shortcut? Is also ready. Control K uncomment, U for uncommenting, Control key, and C for commenting. So here, what is that? This is also a default constructor. What is the difference about this one and this one? The difference here is this one is provided by us. So we are creating explicitly. What do it means explicit again? Explicit means we as a programmer create it and write it down here in the code. Implicit, on the other hand, is what? Implicit would be if, let's say, all this thing here is gone and there is no constructor at all, then the compiler would implicitly create here a default constructor for this class. Implicit means the compiler is doing it behind the scene. You can see something like that. All right. And then we have this one. We are back to this. And here our default constructor, which we are providing. And you see here, I do what here? I am writing here some default values, or in the body I'm doing anything. So here a question, what is the difference about this default values providing from here? From here, actually there is not a big difference. You are providing it here. Probably this one is a little bit more efficient for performance, but the main difference is sometimes you can't provide it here. And that's the main reason why we have this initializer list here, and then providing the default values there. But important note here is, most time in real practice scenarios, they are not using this one here, because most time you can provide the default values here and they are using it here. So the question is, wait a minute, why they are using it then here if we have the possibility to use it here in the initializer list? And the reason, the real answer is very simple, because this one is for readability. Of course you can make this one also readability, providing it here line by line, but here line by line and then functions, and you can provide everything here in the constructor body. It's more readable, a little bit better. That's why they are doing it most time initial value and initial functions and whatever here in the constructor body. And that's yeah, that's it. And yeah, let's go here a little bit more and see some things else. So I think when we create here this functions, you can see how we create an object of a class. You would just take the house name. Then this one, the first version is what? With parameter, that would call this one here. The second here is what? That would call my default constructor here. Let's start if this is true. And indeed, we see it is true, this one. And here, let's talk about this default value. I mentioned this before. Why the hell why I'm providing here a default value, and that's also very important, is let's say you have this default constructor, you are forcing this. Let's say you don't have this one because two default constructors are not allowed. So for example, this one you can't do because now you have two default constructors, and then we would get an error. So we have to uncomment one or delete it just. Let's uncomment this in this case. Comment here. And then you can see when we have this one here, right? Default, I create here a default constructor. But if I'm using this one here, and indeed I'm using here this one here, then this variable would be not initialized if I have not a value. And most time you will see a lot of people are not using this one here. They are saying that will be initialized later anyway. Yes, of course they will be initialized when you provide something like this, or you are providing something like that. But let's say accidentally something happened and you are providing not something like that, and you have something like that, and then you get a problem because now you can see here my house 2 object, this is using the default constructor here, and then I have a problem. This house number is not initialized. It is not showing as a error, but it is an error. You can see when I start this one, it's a warning, and it says here in our local variable is not initialized. Yes, indeed. My house 2 here, this one is trying to call my house, and this one is not initialized. And to prevent this, we can provide all time a default value, and that's why providing here anything as a default value is very nice. And still, if it's here provided, you can still override it in other places with other default values as well. But you can see, makes sense to have all time when you're creating a variable, at least anything in it instead of not initialized. So then let's talk a little bit more. So that was the access specifier. We have here public, protected, private, and here we have functions. And important about functions, there are different kind of functions. We will talk a little bit more later. And I think let's close this because there is so much to talk about. Classes. We will talk a lot of classes again when we talk about other stuff like virtualization, friend functions, and so on. But this is a good start for us, and we repeat it here a little bit. We will talk also a little bit more of parts, what a class has, and so on. But I think if you understand this one, this was the very basics here, you can see, there is one more basic, perhaps. What is that what I'm doing right now? Wait a second, I'm selecting all and buy. What is now? Is this also a valid class, what I'm doing here? And the answer is yes, it is, but more or less it has not a real use case. Still you can do something with that. You can create still an object here. You can see I can create an object, but yeah, there is nothing. This one is probably the basic, super basic class. And careful, even if this one looks very basic, here is created a lot of things by the compiler. That was again this implicit creation. What is created here? There is the constructor created, and there are much more created actually. There is something like copy assignment operator, then copy constructor, and so on, which we have not talked, which we will talk in future videos. But the compiler is actually creating here a lot of things with this one here behind the scene, which we don't know. We have only talked about constructor and destructor. We will talk about the destructor a little bit more in detail in other questions here. But yeah, you see, we have talked and created here a very basic class. And the good practice here, methods, is documenting, writing, and perhaps this one as well. You can see here on top, many people use public here on top because they say when you create an object, These public variables are used outside, and this protected and private are used inside, so they don't need to be on the top. So you can see all variables outside instantly. That some people use for good practice, but this is just preference. It matters not if you have private on top, protected here, or even a mix of that. But again, good practice perhaps. And yeah, with that said, I would finish the question 1, which was a little bit repetition of a class, very, very basics. And yeah, and now in the next video, we will continue. We will go on about many questions and repeat a lot of things. And I hope it was easy so far and you understand everything. And again, my answer is also not perfect, of course. And what you should do is read and repeat a little bit, and the best part is repeat on the web, repeat on the site here what a class is. Again, go to the class section and see really what a class is and repeat this a little bit. Repetition makes you better, and so on. With that said, if you have any questions, like all time, write in the comment section. See you in the next video. Good luck, have fun, and like all time, never give up. Bye.